Hello and a warm welcome. Thank you for joining me on yet another exciting episode of Viewer Exclusive here on Viewer Television. Today we'll be taking our eyes on the education sector. And we know that the education sector in Nigeria has been on a constant epileptic state. And most hit also are also some particular institutions, say higher institutions, yet in the education sector. And why is that? Why don't we have the much needed attention or concern on this education sector? And again, recently there has been hopes that the Student Loan Bill Act, which was passed in June of 2023 by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, would commence in January. It was earlier on promised October, September. It failed to meet that deadline. We're yet again promised January of 2024. January has elapsed and yet students do not have access to this loan. Why is that? I'll be joined by an expert and we'll have to deliberate on these issues and possibly find solutions, if the people are listening, to how we can get out of this sin. My name is Chinon, so Chekwas, join me again after the break. Many thanks for sticking around. This is still Viewer Exclusive here on Viewer Television. And joining me live in the studio is Mr. Ejiro Odnweta. He is a lecturer with the City Polytechnic in Abuja. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on. Yeah, so like I mentioned in my introduction, I guess a lot of people would agree with me, and I would like to get your views too. Do you agree that the education sector has been on a constant dwindle and is not getting the much attention that it needs?
Yes, I think I agree with you because we've seen that even the budget for education is seen more like a joke, because if education is your priority, then I guess it should be the number one thing on your list, you know. So at this point, I think the handlers of the government, whoever is responsible for this, should really sit up and fund education properly, because garbage in, garbage out. If you don't fund education properly, in fact, that's why you see Nigerians going to countries like Benin Republic. I mean, it's such an eyesore. Why will a Nigerian go to Benin Republic? Some even go to Niger. You understand? Chad and the rest, just for education. And it doesn't really make sense. If we are the giants of Africa, we should really wake up and do something. Because if we don't really invest in human capacity, you know, in the long run, what do we fall back to when we no longer have the fuel and what have you? You know, so places like China, they develop their human capacity, right? So you see, that's why you see them coming out with different things. In China today, every family you see produce something.
Yeah.
But can we say the same thing about Nigeria? It starts with education. The kind of education you give. These days, the kind of education they give, the curriculum are just something else. How can you bring a curriculum that does not tally with the modern day life? So I think we need to start from that angle, to start looking at things to do away with and things to allow to thrive in our educational sector.
So education also affects productivity in the home, if I get you right.
Of course.
You drew parallels
Of
with
course.
China.
It does.
right now.
It does
It
because
does.
the level of education you give whoever handles your kids. You see, let me digress a little. That's why you see for those persons who go to the village to bring an house help to handle their kids, what is the level of education does that person really have? Because it is what they have that they will give. Okay, so if you don't have it, you can't give it.
Yeah, and this people are in constant communication with your children.
Yes, of
sometimes
course.
more than you,
More than-
the
yeah,
parents,
yeah.
yourself. And you also said that if education is your priority, so I'm guessing that in other words, you're saying that education should be
It
one
should
of
be.
our priorities.
It should be because we should start looking at areas where you provide everything needed for schools to thrive. Because in a situation where, of recent, there's this issue of using computerized gadgets for jam, and some section of the country are saying no, we can't let that happen because it will affect a lot of our persons and all that. You see, that's the default. I think the government need to start investing in education, looking towards that direction because we are in a global village now. Things are
Yeah.
changing, so we need to start investing. In some countries, they've done away with using books and all that. What they do now, they just use the computerized system and they make things happen. So we need to start looking at investing more in education.
Than we are already
Yes.
doing right now. Okay, so let's move directly. You're a lecturer in a private polytechnic. Let us in on what it is like, right? Being in that system, because it is not one that so much attention is given to. People do not even know that, people are aware of state polytechnics, federal polytechnics. Now we're talking about private polytechnics. Let us in on how that system runs. Is it the same? Let's begin from finding out that.
Well, let me start by saying it's a different ball game in the private polytechnic because people have this notion that if you own a private polytechnic or you run a private polytechnic, oh, probably somebody who has worked with government, they've stole money, that's why they are opening a private polytechnic. But it is not so. There are some persons who genuinely really want to invest in that sector and they put in their hard-earned money to make these things happen. And another thing we should know about the private polytechnic is that most of these polytechnic don't even get enough students to really run the system.
Okay.
Their student staff, they struggle to get students because at one point JAM is not even encouraging.
Okay, we'll get to that, to how you access and how you get students. But are you as equipped as other federal and state polytechnics?
Because this is a private business, you can only do as much as you can. All right. So this is a call on government to equally look at. There was a time they gave a loan. They gave loan for I think TED fund for other schools and government-owned schools. They should extend this to the private schools because at the end of the day, these schools are owned by Nigerian, and it is Nigerian students that still attend these schools. So if you invest, if you give them loans to be able to meet up, to be able to equip the system, it is Nigerians that will benefit from it. Okay, there's a way you arrange it, you can recoup your money. But when you start looking at it as, oh, these are private business, government should not have a hand in it or not that. No, I don't think that is the right way to go. It's high time government sits with these private polytechnic or university owners and find out in what area can government really come in to help the system.
Okay.
Because it is Nigerians that work there, it is
Yes.
Nigerians that school there. Okay, so at the end of the day, it is Nigeria that will benefit.
Okay.
All right, so it's high time we have that roundtable conference where the both sides will now come up with what they think they need in order for the school to get to the Eldorado.
Okay, so you're talking about so if I understand what you're saying that the government should also be involved in funding
should be involved.
private polytechnics
Of
too,
course.
as they do others. So in essence, it means that right now they are not.
They are not.
They are not.
Because
Okay, let's move. Sorry, let's move to you're talking about federal government funding the polytechnics as a system and as an organization. Let's go back to the students' loan right now. Do we have students there who can access the loans?
No, unfortunately,
Or
the
not?
loan don't really cover those in private institutions. You have to belong to a government known school to be able to access the loan. That's one part of it. And some of the bottleneck, I think they need to review that, because at one time your parents or your guardian need to earn a certain amount of money to be able to. I don't think they should look towards that direction. I mean, if you are earning below 100,000, let's say 50,000, you should be able to access that loan. You should be able to make it. What they need to do is to give you a NIM number, okay, that they can use to trace you, track you down, and all that. So I think at this point the government needs to really review that particular policy to ensure that it carries everybody along, because it is Nigerians. Everybody, we are all facing the same thing. Okay, in fact, some people have this notion that if you're in a private school, you're well to do, but that's not the truth. That's
everybody
not true,
should have
some
access
persons can't even get admission into some of the government schools. If I tell you the bureaucracy that go on in some of these government schools, you'll be shocked.
Oh, really?
Yes, there's what they call the catchment area.
Yes.
All right, and we have the cutoff mark and all that. So some of these things kind of prevent some persons from getting admission into the schools. So it becomes a problem.
Okay. You mentioned about we hear that organizations, universities are understaffed, but now you're saying you don't have enough students. How is that you don't have enough students?
Well,
we have a lot of people who are looking for places to get educated.
Of course.
How don't you have enough students?
Of course. You see, every year we tend to have students in their numbers buying JAM forms. And some of these private institutions, they are in the brochure of JAM. All right? Now, the thing is, you see JAM selling these forms, that's the JAM form, for maybe 25,000 students, while at the end of the day, you are just going to admit maybe 800,000 students in some of these government-owned institutions. So one would have expected that JAM, having done that, you make sure you exhaust the whole, because we have enough school to accommodate all these persons. Okay? What JAM should have done is, those who got admission into some of these government institutions, when you've exhausted the number you need, you send the rest to distribute them to some of these other institutions. Now, the onus is now on the person to either accept to go to that school or not to. But that is not the case with what we see with JAM. What they do is, they'll tell you, okay, the portal is closed for this year, go and you have to go get another JAM form for another year again. It's more like a vicious cycle, and they just keep generating money it doesn't work that way.
So you're saying that JAM doesn't have slots where students can fill in to come into these private polytechnics?
They do.
So, but they don't send them there.
They don't send them there. And I think they don't help the system. If you operate that way, you're not helping the system, because at the end of the day, it is the society that will suffer for it. Okay, because if you end up not giving these guys admission, and they are not able to get admitted into some of the government-owned schools, what they do? They go back to the streets.
Yeah.
And I don't mind. It's the devil's workshop. So you engage them, distribute them to some of these institutions. The onus is on them to either want to follow through or decide not to. Okay? But I believe that if JAM is able to send some of these persons to this private institution, they'll follow through. It's just that some persons are not even aware that they can really just go. Some schools, some of these private institutions, you have to do a lot of adverts to be known.
So is that how you source students?
Of course, you have to advertise. You
Okay.
have to advertise, and some persons will come around, check your facility. If they are okay with it, they want to
No,
join.
but as a private organization, isn't that okay that you have to? Because we see other private universities advertising and all that to get their students.
That,
Why
that
do the private polytechnics feel that's different, or they shouldn't have to go through all of that?
no, they
before?
go through all of that. But what I'm saying is, in Nigeria, there's this notion that people just like to go to universities. They see polytechnic like a second feeder. They don't see it as something they want to. But I tell you what, polytechnics are really dishing out what it takes. When you go to universities, what they do is more of theory. All right.
Techniques are
But
more hands-on.
polytechnics, they go just beyond the theory and all that. They teach you the technical know-how on how to operate. That's why if you see a thoroughbred polytechnic graduate, they are always different because they have the technical know-how.
Agreed.
Okay, they do more of practical works. All right. So I think the government should begin to encourage people to see the polytechnic for what it is, to begin to attend some of this polytechnic, because if we don't do that, we end up having half-baked graduates. Yes, it's okay to go to a university. You understand? I'm not criticizing that. It's very okay to go through the four walls of university. But if you put a polytechnic student, a polytechnic graduate, side by side with a university student, the difference is always clear. That's why
Yeah.
you see some graduates are half-baked when they come out of the system.
Polytechnic students are usually better.
To an extent, I'll say yes, because the technical know-how is there. If you bring an engineer, it's not just by saying, "Oh, I read this book." They practicalize it. But how many of that do you see being done in the university?
I think this goes beyond just maybe the federal government putting more attention. I think it goes down to even organizations or companies while employing. They want to employ people with a BSc rather than employ people with, the HNDs and all of that.
Yes,
So that is, it almost is also on them too to know that you're looking for skilled people. You should be looking for polytechnic graduates.
But you see, we all look on the government to do the needful. If government is laying more emphasis on the importance of why people should attend polytechnic, I believe the message will sink
spread
in.
around.
People
Yeah.
will understand, okay, this is why you need a polytechnic graduate. All right? Because always they are better off because they have the technical know-how. You bring a graduate of, let's say, engineering or computer science, he knows what to do because he has practicalized it in the school over and over again, compared to somebody who you're telling someone about computer, the person has not seen or operated or even coupled a computer. You just see it on book. When you bring it, see, I've told you a story of somebody who said he's an engineer. At the end of the day, they brought a printer for him to fix. He was consulting
idea.
Google.
Oh, wow.
Yes, trying to see how to fix it.
And this is a graduate.
yes,
And we won't find that common amongst polytechnic graduates
no,
because
no, no,
they've
no.
been
At
hands-on
the end
on
of
that.
the day, they brought a polytechnic graduate. He was the one that fixed
that
the whole
fixed
thing.
that
Because-
without using Google.
No, you don't need that.
All right, so we would like to know how these polytechnics run so that we can enlighten the public on how polytechnics run using your polytechnic, your private polytechnic as a case study, but we'll go into that right after the break. It's time now for a quick break. Join us again after the break on Viewer Exclusive. This is still viewer exclusive here on Viewer Television, and our eyes today is still on the education sector, specifically on the private polytechnics, and I'm still in conversation with Mr. Ejiro Onweta. Yes, so like I said before we went on the break, just give us, you're in the system, give us your bird's eye view on how specifically private polytechnics work. But let me start by asking, do they work the same way we have the private and the federal and the state polytechnics run? Do they run in the same
Of
manner?
course, they have the same curriculum.
Okay.
They operate the same way. We only have one Ministry of Education, and they dish out the standards, So the thing is, as a student who wants to access a polytechnic, you must have your 5 O-level credit, including maths and English, all right? And then the field of study, you must have some courses in your field of study, depending on what you want to go into, all right? Then you must write JAM, okay? Then if you don't have JAM, you must do JAM, what they call JAM regularization. Okay, you have to switch, go to JAM, they'll do the regularization, you switch to that particular polytechnic, and that's where people felt like, okay, if this person they fill their form and they didn't put that particular institution, JAM should have invited those persons, send their names to that particular school, distribute them, then later bring them back to do JAM regularization, all right? Because you're going to need that, So I think the system works perfectly, because when you go to a polytechnic, I bet you they have all the equipment needed, because know you are competing. It's more like a competition, so you have to put everything in place to be able to meet up. If you don't have some of this equipment, in fact, some of these private polytechnics are because it's an individual thing. Before you go into it, they'll give you a list even before your accreditation. The MBT will give you a list to tell you this need to be met before we can accredit your school. So what they do is they ensure that they put everything in place, because when the MBT come to inspect, they'll do a thorough job. I think there's nothing that you must have everything. Yes, you must have everything. If not, they won't let you be.
Okay. So seeing that you're a private polytechnic and you have to run your own advertorials to get students, how often or how many times in a year are you open for applications from students?
Yes, it is a continuous thing, but they do it twice a year.
Okay.
All right. They put out adverts, to ensure that people are able to assess the system. You have to pay through your nose to get this done, because putting out adverts is not easy. You have to get billboard, print flyers, go to media houses to get all these things done. It doesn't come that easy.
Okay.
Yes, because at the end of the day, you need to run the system, you need to pay your staff and all that. It's not that easy.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah.
All right. So when it comes to K3 and 4, let me see, faculties and all, how many faculties do you have? Are you open for all arts, the faculties?
No. It depends on what you can take. Some polytechnics we just have maybe 4 or 5 faculty, or 6, 7 departments, as the case may be, because it's a gradual process. You look at your strength and decide to start from that point. Maybe after every 2-3 years, they come and do a review, check. Before they even give you a license, they'll give you at least 4 years to see how you fare before they'll come back again to give you the full accreditation, because they want to see how you're able to manage the system before you're given a full accreditation. So having done that, you can now apply for maybe a new department, so that you take it up from there.
Okay. So that's good. So let's wrap this up now with this general question now on the education sector. Like I asked you, how important it is for education, right? Like if you want to build a nation, you're looking at education. How important, how much priority should we begin to place right now on the educational sector in general We're rounding up now.
Well, I think this administration should look at education, education, education. It solves all the problem we have.
It solves the problem of insecurity?
It does, because if some of these persons are well educated, there's nothing you will tell them. They have a mind of their own. They will understand that what they're about to do is not right.
It's not right.
And if you are properly educated, you will not be idle. Because
you need education for that.
Yes, if you are properly educated, you must know one or two things to do to get you, give you financial strength.
It will solve our economic crisis.
It will.
All right. Thank you very much. It's always great and insightful to have you give your views and analysis as always on Viewer Exclusive. And that has been me in conversation with Mr. Ejiro Odoreta, a lecturer and a political commentator, and he's a lecturer at the City Polytechnic in Abuja. And as always, my name is Chinonso Chekwes. Thank you for sticking around till the end of this episode of Viewer Exclusive. Until I come your way again, have a good time.